New York City courtroom on Judgment Day for Sean Diddy Combs, the music mogul, being sentenced today on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution.
So far, the hearing has been going on for about 2 hours and has been largely procedural. Prosecutors are soon expected to read impact statements from key figures in the case, like Combs' former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, his former assistant, as well as his stylist.
As for the defense, Combs' legal team planning to play an 11-minute video showing Combs over the years with his children for the court. We are also expecting to hear from members of his family. His mother and several of his kids are there.
And he said that, specifically, he said, quote, "A history of good works can't wash away the record." He pointed out that two of Diddy's accusers and former girlfriends.
All right, what's up with it, y'all? So look, man, I'm back again with another video, right? Now listen, basically Diddy has been sentenced to 50 months, and I think that's like 4 years and a couple of months, which ain't bad for all of the shit that he had going on when it came to so many different things. They had, you know, alleged drugs, they had them toots. So many different witnesses going against him. You know, I would take that, you know, to the chin, you know, and go in there and do my time and get on out and be a better man. But ultimately, you know, with the whole sentencing situation, there's been a lot of speculations on what Cuz got going on and what he had plans on doing afterwards. Now, everything I'm saying is allegedly because it hasn't been confirmed or denied, but it has been brought up to the public's attention that he had a speaking engagement set up for next week. So evidently he was expected to get out. Now I have been seeing pictures floating around that these people be drawing in the courtroom. They got all type of different shit with him crying, laying down, having his head over his face. I don't know how true those are, but that shit there is crazy to see, you know what I'm saying, that people really go through a lot of different shit after they done did so much and really just can't take it, you know what I'm saying? But, you know, basically, really ain't nobody gonna take a sentencing well if it's not going in their favor. So, you know, it is what it is. Now, it's so many different people saying so many different things that he should have got life, and I don't believe all of that shit right there. I honestly feel like that he was doing some shit he didn't have no business doing. And with that being said, it's consequences to your actions. You know, as a man, you got to accept what you have done and move forward with your life, and I'm pretty sure he's willing to do that. But he should have action at an appeal, you know what I'm saying? So you never know what could happen when it comes to that. Now, I have a lot of different videos that I've been watching, and I'm going to put them together for y'all so y'all can kind of get the gist of what's been going on, what people have been saying and things like that. But basically, you know, certain people are saying that he shouldn't, you know, be able to speak in public, but some people think that he will be able to speak in public. I think that, you know, with everything that was going on, it's pretty fair sentencing. You know, I'm going to keep it real. And if half of the shit that they said Diddy did was really true, that's like a slap on the wrist. You really came out unscathed, damn near. You know, but being a multi-billionaire and having everything stripped from you instantly like that can mess a person's mind up. You know, having 5-star dinners, flying all over the world, having multiple mansions, women at your fingertips, billions at your fingertips. Anything that you want to do can be done. That'll mess with a man's mental for sure. But ultimately, you know, I want to say that anybody that was a genuine victim out there, I do sympathize with them. And for those who was just trying to get a part of some money, that shit crazy because you was a willing participant. And a lot of different people were willing participants. Over here on my channel, I don't know what y'all used to, if y'all new here, but I keep it all the way 100. I ain't finna lie, sugarcoat a goddamn thing. Some of them people was lying on, bro. Some of them people were in full cooperation. They were in cahoots with whatever he had going on. And even those male strippers and shit was letting shit be known like, yeah, everybody was in agreement and they knew what they were doing. And, you know, ultimately, you know, shit, it just is what it is at the end of the day. I want to know y'all thoughts and opinions. I don't know what order I'm going to put these videos in, but a lot of these videos came out before he was sentenced. So you will be hearing people speaking in past tense when in all actuality, he was just sentenced. I'm going to put that video or some videos right now where he was just sentenced, and then the other videos you'll see that was prior to the whole sentencing. But look, I want to know y'all thoughts and opinions on this. Do y'all think that justice was served? Do y'all feel like everything went the way that they should have went and things like that? We're gonna talk about everything. Who calling me? We're going to talk about this in the comment section. I'll holler at y'all in a minute.
Federal judge handed down a sentence in the high-profile Sean Diddy Combs trial. The rapper was convicted on federal prostitution charges back in July. Let's go right now to Fox News national correspondent CB Cotton outside of the courthouse. CB?
Hey, Will, yeah, the judge moments ago sentencing Sean Diddy Combs to 4 years behind bars, telling the court he took into consideration that Diddy was self-made, someone who lifted up others, supported his family. He noted that Diddy did a lot of this while even battling addiction, but he said he had to consider all of the rapper's history. And he said that, specifically, he said, quote, "A history of good works can't wash away the record." He pointed out that two of Diddy's accusers and former girlfriends, Cassie Ventura and a woman who testified under the pseudonym Jane, he talked about their testimony specifically. The judge pointing out that after Diddy publicly apologized for the leaked video of him assaulting Cassie, that Diddy assaulted his current girlfriend, Jane. And this sentence handed down 4 years behind bars for Sean Diddy Combs. It comes after Diddy pleaded for mercy, stood up and addressed the judge inside the courtroom. In a shaken voice, he apologized to Cassie Ventura. He apologized to that former girlfriend, again known as Jane. And he said he was sorry to all other victims of domestic violence. Diddy called his own behavior disgusting, shameful, and sick. And he said it cost him his career, his reputation, and his family. He also then turned in the courtroom to his children and apologized for letting them down, saying that he had not been the father they deserved. And he really pleaded with the judge to give him another chance. But again, ultimately, Will, we now know that the disgraced media mogul, who was once at the height of the music industry, has now been sentenced to 4 years behind bars. The judge said that any of Diddy's past good works could not overstate the record in this case. The witness testimony from women who said they had to endure years of physical and emotional abuse at the hands of the rapper. Will, I want to send it back over to you.
Quick follow-up, CB. The prosecution was looking for anywhere around 11 years, and the defense team for Diddy was looking for something like 14 months. As you mentioned, it came back at 4 years. Was there any visible reaction by Combs in the courtroom when he was handed down that sentence?
Right now, I'm still waiting to get some more details about the reaction that we saw from both sides inside the courtroom. But, Will, I do want to point out that the judge said that the requests being made on both ends, he said they were not reasonable requests. And I think that determination on his part ultimately led him to hand down that sentence. I'm looking at my producer, who's about to hand me a note in a matter of moments. But right now, we know this sentence has just been handed down from the judge. 4 years behind bars. Like you mentioned, defense attorneys wanted a 14-month sentence, saying that the time Diddy has already spent behind bars was adequate punishment, arguing today that Diddy's businesses and reputation have already been destroyed. Prosecutors, on the other hand, said Diddy was not sorry and that his apology was phony and that there was some serious harm done to the victims of this case. Like you said, they wanted a sentence of at least 11 years. Ultimately, we know a sentence has now been shared with the court of 4 years behind bars for Sean Diddy Combs.
We're going to start outside a New York City courtroom on Judgment Day for Sean Diddy Combs, the music mogul being sentenced today on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution.
So far, the hearing has been going on for about 2 hours and has been largely procedural. Prosecutors are soon expected to read impact statements from key figures in the case, like Combs' former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, his former assistant, as well as his stylist.
As for the defense, Combs' legal team planning to play an 11-minute video showing Combs over the years with his children for the court. We are also expecting to hear from members of his family. His mother and several of his kids are there in the courtroom right now.
Now, it's up to the judge how much time Combs will serve. He faces up to 20 years total total, 10 on each count. But prosecutors are seeking just over 11 years, and Combs' attorneys are asking for 14 months, which has already essentially been time served. Following all of this, NBC News entertainment correspondent Chloe Molas, she joins us now from the U.S. District Court there in Manhattan. She was inside the overflow room in the courthouse this morning. Chloe, tell us what you saw. We know that Combs did not speak during the trial, but do we think that he will address the judge today?
That's a really good question, and it appears that he might speak today for the first time. He submitted this emotional 3.5-page letter directly to the judge last night, saying that he acknowledges his dark past and that he wants to become a better man. He also talked about the deplorable conditions at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, where he has been in jail for the last year, talking about how he doesn't even get any fresh air and that he really wants to be able to go home to his family, that he thinks every day about the violence, especially against Cassie Ventura, and that he could not imagine someone being violent with one of his own daughters. But again, we don't know if he's actually going to talk. We do know that 6 of his children are in the courtroom. I saw them. They were sitting behind their dad. At one point, Combs turned around and he made a heart sign towards them. When he first walked into the courtroom today, he has this gray beard. He looks like he's gained some weight. He hugged all of his attorneys, as he did all throughout the trial. But again, we'll just see how this plays out. We're getting closer and closer to victim impact statements being read. But if Combs does address the judge, it will be the very first time that we're hearing him in a courtroom in his own words.
You know, Chloe, there was a woman referred to as Mia throughout the trial. She was expected to make a witness impact statement today. She pulled out moments, though, before court session began. What can you tell us about that?
So New York prosecutors said that the reason that she pulled out of making a victim impact statement at the sentencing hearing today was because of a letter that Combs' defense team submitted last night, really challenging her credibility, calling her a liar, and saying that she was not a victim. And it was for those reasons that the prosecutors said that this letter was bullying, and that this is why she's not there doing what she is legally allowed to do, which is to read a victim impact statement and address the court and the judge in her own words. And the judge agreed that it was inappropriate. So again, we're expecting the prosecutors to read a letter from Cassie Ventura, one of Combs' former girlfriends, and read that letter from Mia that was submitted to the court that we've actually already seen. And again, Combs' children are expected to get up before the judge, and 2 to 3 of them speak.
In court today, Chloe, you know, prosecutors, they did bring up reports that Combs already has speaking engagements booked for next week, in Miami, because he's so confident that he's going to. I mean, how did the judge respond to that?
So one of the things that was in Combs' letter last night was the fact that he has been teaching these business classes to inmates at Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center, and that he is trying to impart wisdom on them and to help teach them as part of the rehabilitation that he's decided to take on for himself and others behind bars. And so there actually is somebody that submitted a letter on Combs' behalf yesterday outlining what Combs would do upon re-entry into society. And in there are multiple dates set for Miami starting as early as Monday. And it looks as though Combs has booked tentative dates in the slight chance that he would walk out a free man today out of the courthouse behind me. So again, it'll be interesting to see if the judge addresses that and takes any of that into consideration when it comes to his sentencing later today.
Really important day there in that case. Chloe Molas for us there outside the courthouse.
Diddy gets 5 years. What do we think? Well, you have to understand what happened at the sentencing. At the sentencing just now, what the judge did is they took his guidelines range for a Mann Act violation and they gave him an enhancement. Under the federal sentencing guidelines, your range can go up if you do things like if there's an element of coercion involved in the crime. The judge found that there was an element of coercion here. Now, it begs the question, this is the argument that's going to go up on appeal, how can you try somebody for sex trafficking, commercial sex using coercion, get acquitted on sex trafficking, commercial sex using coercion, and then get sentenced for the Mann Act prostitution charges with an enhancement for coercion? The bottom line is, one way to look at what happened here was the jury's verdict finding that there was no force, no coercion, got thrown out the window.
I want to let you know, Judge Subramanian is back. He has begun officially delivering his sentence. He says to the court, he says to Sean Combs, "At the outset, I want you to understand, Mr. Combs, you are not being sentenced for acquitted conduct." So he's not being sentenced for racketeering. He's not being sentenced for sex trafficking. But under 3553, which, by the way, is the federal statute regarding imposition of a sentence, under 3553, I must consider many things. Mr. Combs, you are a self-made artist who has inspired community of color. Okay, so we're stopping right there. We're waiting for these updates to come in real time. Serena, does that I'm going to tell you, there's a but, right? Yes, you've done many things, but, and that might not be good for Sean Combs.
When a judge gives any sort of remarks like that, there's always a but. And when you start hearing good things, be prepared for the flip side because it's coming. And I will say to your earlier comments about turning life around, this is a very different type of crime than your typical one-day event. Yes, he was a great guy in certain other aspects of his life, perhaps, but he was living a lifestyle of these crimes. It's very different from a defendant who appears in front of a judge who had one bad day, right? Robbed one person, got into a fight with one person and stabbed that person. This was a lifestyle.
Okay, another update. Judge says, we saw the video. The free game course in the MDC, the court hopes you continue to expand it. You are devoted to your family. The court, of course, considers the collateral consequences. The court has to consider all of your history here. And that's true, by the way. The factors to be considered in imposing a sentence are I'm looking at the statute, the nature and circumstances of the offense, the history and characteristics of the defendant, the need for the sentence to be imposed, the kinds of sentences available, the kind of sentence and the sentencing range, any pertinent policy statement, the need to avoid unwarranted sentence disparities among defendants. So just looking for an update here. Okay. A history of good works can't wash away the record in this case. You abused these women. You used that abuse to get your way. Freak-offs and hotel nights. The evidence of the abuse is massive. I was sitting right here during the testimony. Joe, this isn't good for Sean Combs.
No, it's not good for Sean Combs because he started off with good stuff and he says, but on the other hand, you know what I mean? Because to my mind, it could be different, but a lot of times you start off with the part, not with the part that you're going to end with. You know what I mean? Here's the good news, but here's the bad news, and here we are because of the bad news, as opposed to here's the bad news, and here's the good news, and here's where we are because of the good news. I think the order of things may dictate that, he's going to come at him, and it's not going to be a low-end type sentence.
Sierra, this is very consistent with what we talked about before, where that video was being played of Sean Combs, where you look at his history of helping others, you look at his works in the community. You and I had talked about it. The argument would be, yes, but at the same time he was committing crimes. Or after his apology video for Cassie, he was accused of committing crimes. It seems that the judge is being consistent with this, and I apologize if I have to cut you off if the judge says something, but your thoughts?
No, please do cut me off because I want the updates as much as you do, Jesse, and so do our viewers. But I think it's confusing here, right? But two things can be true. P. Diddy can have all the love in the world for his children, and he can be a great dad to them. But on the other side of the coin, he did commit these acts, and it is violence. And I think the thing that was most telling to me from what we've heard. All right, let's hear that update, Jesse.
Sierra, I'm going to throw it right back to you, but this is the judge. This was subjugation. That is the reality of what happened. These offenses irreparably harmed two women. You plied them with drugs. Why did it happen so long? You had the power and resources to keep it going. You were more than a John. Again, Sierra, it was the idea of this happened so many times. I think that was something the judge was going to consider here.
And what he said very specifically is that I was sitting right here. I heard the testimony. And I think that is what is so vital when we were talking about the way that the judge was going to end up with all of this sentencing, is the fact that it wasn't today he decided it. It wasn't in the 3 months that he had to go through and read all of those letters. No, it was when he was sitting there in the courtroom, seeing Cassie and Jane and Mia and all of the testimony there, that this happened over and over again. It wasn't, to your point, to what Serena Serena said earlier, this wasn't a one-time thing. This was a pattern of abuse that the prosecution put on and displayed, and then here we have a conviction. And so I do think that all of this is kind of running through Judge Arun Submarinian's mind as he's coming forth, putting down this sentence, because, I mean, it's really hard to ignore.
All right, Judge, this just came in. A significant sentence is required to deter. You say you're sorry and you won't do it again. After Ms. Ventura's civil lawsuit was filed, after the video was public, an investigation started. You had a brutal hotel night with Jane, punched her in the head. Serena, that is the key here. That is something we have talked about during the course of the day. It didn't deter him. There were significant episodes that came out after the investigation, after the apology. He was arrested with materials in his hotel room that would indicate a freak-off. I think we're looking here at maybe 5 to 7. I don't know yet. What can happen any second, but I think we're looking at significant prison time here.
Yeah, I mean, I think the judge makes an incredible note that, you know, you've had the chance to deter. You were not deterred. You were given an opportunity over and over again, specifically during the investigation, and you can't be stopped. And if you can't be stopped, I'm going to have to be the one to stop you. Yep.
And by the way, the judge has considered his history. He said about the fact that, he became Sean Combs after his father died. That is especially impressive given the early violent death of your father and the trauma that must have left. So he's appreciating all this, but at the same time, he's hitting all of the factors, and he's talking about the evidence that came out during the course of this trial. He just said, Jane says he told her, take this pill, go out there, bleep his bleep, bleep him, I don't care. The court is not convinced this would not happen again. The court has considered the programs. They are outweighed by the trial record in this case. Now I'm wondering here, Joe, are we talking double digits?
I think we're going a little higher. We'll see how high we go. But 5 to 7 at least, and maybe even a little bit more. That's what it's sounding like. And there's an argument that the record supports that. Diddy was extra arrogant, and the length of time, I think, is incredibly persuasive and moving for the judge. Obviously, this is not something that happened once or twice and he got his hand caught in the cookie jar. This was built into what Diddy did. This was his culture, and he was truly lawless, just to put it where it really is. And so, the judge has been very honest about, I don't think that this deters you. And, I tell you, that tracks with me. Maybe we're all wrong, but to go off of what we've had happen and had said and had done and the trial record, that's not unreasonable for the judge to say that.
I am wondering also, Serena, if this is grounds for an appeal, where the court says, I'm not sentencing you on racketeering or sex. Okay, hold on. Here we go. Exploitation and violence against women must be met with real accountability to promote respect for the law. Okay, hold on one second. I'm getting the sentence right now. Okay, here we go. Oh boy.
I'm sweating.
Exploitation and violence against women must be met with real accountability to promote respect for the law. The court reaches a few conclusions. 135 months would be more than necessary. Now, I don't know if that means that that's the actual sentence right now, but 135 months is over 11 years in prison. So over 11 years in prison would be more than necessary. That's what the judge is saying here, Serena. I don't know if that's the official sentence as of yet. We're waiting to get confirmation about that. But what does that say?
Well, just to throw that number out there like that means that at least he was considering the 11 years that the prosecution put forth, and maybe even more than that. It sounds like he's kind of tempering it, like that is more than necessary and it'll be less than the 11. But it also sounds like he at least considered it very seriously as an option.
Now I'm wondering, Sierra, are we talking 7 years? I mean, again, it's something we talked about earlier. Maybe the benefit of the family speaking and the benefit of the work that he's done was not to get to 11 years, but not to go lower. than the 5 to 7 range. So that may have been the benefit, but I'm wondering if 7 years is what we might be looking at. Again, I'm waiting for official confirmation on the sentence here, Sierra.
I think that is possible here, that maybe he's saying, okay, yes, the prosecution, the government brought forward this number of 11 years. Yeah, that is more than necessary based on, we actually have an update, Jesse. I'm going to throw it back to you.
Yep, a sentence over 11 years is not reasonable. So anybody that thought he would get 20 years, that's not happening. A sentence over 11 years is not reasonable. Even the probation department recommends a sentence less than half of that. But 14 months time served, that would not be sufficient. So he has rejected the defense's recommendation of 14 months. In other words, Diddy is not getting out of prison. He is not getting out of prison today. When he would, we're waiting. I'm not, it's not like I have these updates and I'm purposely delaying. I'm getting to them in real time as we are getting them. Sierra, so again, we're now looking at between 14 months and 11 years, but I guess, again, going back to this idea of we're looking at 7.
I mean, all speculation as of right now, but I think the most important thing is what you just said there, Jesse. P. Diddy, Sean Combs, is not getting out of jail today. And the 14-month recommendation that the defense brought has just been thrown completely out the window. The judge says, no, that's not sufficient enough. And I think what he's saying could be taken in a couple of different ways. One, that the 11 years is sufficient. Yes, I mean, based on your conviction here, because again, remember, this is a conviction. 11 years makes sense. It checks out. I agree with the prosecution. But to what Serena said earlier, perhaps, and we do have a new update. Jesse,
I think we have the official sentence right now for Sean Diddy Combs. After being convicted of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution, the judge has just said, here the data shows a wide variety of sentences. Weighing all of the relevant factors, the court determines that the sentence is 50 months of incarceration. So 50 months of incarceration is a little over 4 years. It's 4.16 years in prison. Now, that is a bit lower than what the range was of 5 to 7 years, Sierra. Let's start there. If I'm reading this correct, and we're talking 50 months, and we have another update coming in. I'm just waiting to see what it is. But right now, it appears that Sean Combs has officially been sentenced to 50 months of incarceration, so 4 years in prison. You talk about time served, right? About a year. Are we talking now then 3 years, right, Sierra?
Yeah, so about 3 more years based on the 1 year that he has already served. And I guess, I mean, it is a win for P. Diddy, and that the government asked for 11. You know, the recommendation was 5 to 7, which a lot of us guessed would happen. I mean, yes, he wanted to be out today. That was his goal. The defense, of course, wanting the 14 months. But 3 years compared to the 11 that the judge says, yeah, that's warranted. I mean, there's a huge difference in the range there, more than a decade versus less than half of a decade. We've got another update, Jesse, back to you.
Yep. Serena, Sean Combs was sentenced to 50 months of incarceration by Judge Subramanian, so a little over 4 years. That minus the 14 months already served. Is that the appropriate sentence, Serena?
Well, I'm sure Diddy is not thrilled to not walk out today, but he should be pretty happy with his defense team, because I think the judge giving less than half of the prosecutor's recommendation and also less than what the pre-sentence report had said is a win for him. I do believe that 4 years is a win in this particular case.
Joe, what did it? Was it his letter? Was it the letters of family? Was it the children speaking? Was it the work that he's doing behind bars? Was it the nature of these charges? You know, as much as we say that the judge was not convinced to throw out the charges, right? The defense put forward that motion saying transportation to engage in prostitution should be thrown out. This is not prostitution. It's protected by the First Amendment. The judge didn't buy it. But the argument, hey, he wasn't convicted of racketeering. He wasn't convicted of sex trafficking, just the prostitution charges, can't create a disparity based on other defendants who are sentenced. Maybe 4 years is appropriate and won't be overturned on appeal.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had to position this a certain way. And there's a couple things to figure in. First of all, we got to go back to the fact that the defense did an enormous job in getting him off of the most serious charges, right? So we're talking about something that's going to be smaller and it's going to be less time anyway. Next, there's a probation department recommendation, right? Which put things at a certain place. And it sounded like even though the judge talked about how 11 years wouldn't have necessarily been unreasonable, and he said 14 months would have been entirely unreasonable if I am hearing it correctly, he still is in line in that he doesn't want to do something that'll necessarily be appealable, and he wants to arrive somewhere not too far afield from the recommendations themselves. And so, again, here's Diddy in a situation where he did a lot better than he might have. And, that 3 years is going to go by in no time. And the day that he was found guilty of most of everything, it ensured that he would have a date that he would get home at some point anyway. So he will get home. He's better off than he may have been, than a lot of people would have been, even though he's not coming home today.
Serena, does he serve the full 3 years, or does he serve 85%? In other words, would he serve 2.5 years?
So there is opportunity for him to get out earlier on good behavior. And so the calculation is not exact. And time will tell whether he will be getting out with some time off from the full 3. I know it's a 4-year sentence. Obviously, the 14 months counts. You already deduct that. I mean, that's definitely coming off because he does have credit for the time served. So already it's less than the sentence that he's getting, the 4 years. But yeah, he could very easily be walking out sooner rather than later. So the children will have their father home sooner than they expected. And as Joe mentioned before, he can be on his comeback tour, in no time.
We had a poll up. What do you think Diddy's sentence will be? So 31% said less than 5 years. They were correct. It's interesting as we're processing the sentence of 4 years, time served 3, maybe 85%, so 2.5, 3 years to serve behind bars. I wonder if he's actually going to now have to serve it at the MDC because it's it's a lesser sentence than we were anticipating. I will say the court imposes a fine of $500,000, including to defray the costs of imprisonment. There is no restitution, but there is forfeiture as reflected in the order. There is a $5,000 fine under the statute and a special assessment of $200. Sierra, I go to you. This is interesting because I also wonder what the reaction is going to be outside that courthouse in a few minutes. What we're going to hear from the attorneys, what we're going to hear from supporters of Sean Combs, what we might be hearing from potential victims or people who are there opposed to Sean Combs. Are you seeing anything outside since the sentence has been read?
You know what's interesting, Jesse? After the verdict came down, you could feel it in the air. It was, intense. You could actually feel the emotion. Now that the sentence has been handed down, it seems to me like no one around us actually knows that it was handed down. I mean, it did just happen. We're probably one of the first ones to report it at all, but there's been no commotion. There's been no cheering. There's been no free Diddy, in support of Diddy. There's been no opposition to Diddy. That has been pretty interesting to me overall. I mean, as far as what we're going to hear from the attorneys, I said this about the verdict, and I'm going to say it about this too. I think it's a win for P. Diddy. I mean, the fact that he was up against this RICO charge, the racketeering conspiracy, had he been convicted of that, he could have faced essentially the rest of his life behind bars. Now he had pretty much the lowest charge that he was convicted of, this transportation to engage in prostitution. And now, based on what Serena is saying with the 4 years, and maybe he could serve less based on, good behavior, etc., I'm going to say that's a huge win for Diddy, especially when his life was in the balance. And I wonder if that's what we're going to hear. I wonder if prosecutors are going to say, we asked for the 11 years. The judge says it was warranted, and yet we didn't get the 11 years. And I wonder if the defense is going to say it's still too much. It's far too long. Get him out with his children. We're going to appeal. I mean, so there's still a lot of...
What should happen here is the judge should show Diddy leniency. What we learned in court this morning is that of the 900 Mann Act cases, there's a defense lawyer who said, I've read all 900 Mann Act cases out there. A lot of these cases, I think it sounds like almost the majority of these cases result in downward departures from the guidelines. We heard horrible cases of people paying for sex with 14-year-olds. Paying for sex with 14-year-olds. That guy got 18 months. Okay, the averages on these Mann Act cases is like 18 months, 24 months. Many people get a year. When you hear the testimony of the children, when you hear that this man has a 2-year-old, that his wife died, that their mother died, that his father died, and you find out that he's never been convicted of a crime, and you hear that, when you hear all that, for these charges to give him more than 13 months and keep him from his family and continue to take his freedom, what is the system?
I told you that this was an unpredictable day. I didn't know this, what I'm about to read to you. So Prosecutor Slavik and Sierra, I didn't hear this, maybe you did, just said Mr. Combs has booked speaking engagements for Miami for next week. That is the height of hubris. He did this for 15 years. He was responsible for transporting many escorts. That's a lot of freak-offs and a lot of hotel nights. He knew it was illegal. I didn't know that, Sierra, because that would signify he thinks he's getting out. If that's true.
I did not know this either, Jesse. I mean, I'm very shocked about all of this. And I guess as you're going through, I'm reading this update in the same time that you are. And I'm thinking the math isn't quite mathing for me, though, because if he was arrested on September 16th of last year, it's early October, we aren't quite at the 13-month threshold. And his team is asking for 14 months. So then if they're asking for the 14 months, it doesn't make sense if he was to book this in Miami for next week. Is that showing that he's very confident he's going to get out even in less than that 14 months? I mean, I'm shocked by this news.
I'm curious what the defense's response to that will be, that allegation. One more thing, Sierra. We have a poll up that says, do you think Diddy will speak publicly after sentencing? So that's assuming, of course, that he gets time served and is let out immediately, which we don't believe is going to happen because he still has to be processed from the MDC. But the poll says 38% say yes through a lawyer, 32% say yes immediately, 30% say no. The question I have to you is, have you heard anything about what we can expect post-sentencing? What the scene is going to be like afterwards? Do we know if there's going to be any press conferences from either attorneys, prosecutors, defense attorneys, victims, anybody? Is there anything set up outside the courthouse for that?
It's interesting that you say that, Jesse, because right before you tossed to me, I was literally thinking that. What is our contingency plan for what is going to happen? Now, we do have, right where I'm at, we've got our camera, I'm coming to you live. Across the street, though, we're taking a look at it right now. We have that camera completely set up. Now, there's always that podium there every time I've been here in New York, just kind of ready to go, whatever could happen. So I guess there's a couple of answers for this. Number one, do I think that P. Diddy, whenever he's sentenced, whenever he himself has the availability to speak, will he? Yes, I personally do think that. I mean, we know Diddy. We know he's pretty charismatic. We know he has, his story about everything. And I'm sure he wants to share his feelings about all of it after keeping relatively quiet. I mean, he didn't testify, of course. They didn't call any witnesses for the defense. I know Diddy's going to want to talk. Will it be today? I'm thinking probably not. I guess we'll wait and see. However, for the defense and prosecution, I would not be surprised if we have some sort of press conference after all of this. Again, we are ready to go if that does happen. I haven't heard anything definitively. I think a lot of it depends on what sort of sentence is handed down, but we're definitely ready for it.
Or if he's going to be speaking in Miami. I mean, Alexis, if that's true, I mean, Alexis, that says something, doesn't it?
Well, it says that he appears to continue to think he's above the law, that he can just, basically get away with these crimes, not have to serve any additional time, and go on his merry way. And I do agree. As soon as he can, he will be talking. But I think this is also consistent with the concern that the judge is having, that he is not showing any sort of remorse. He doesn't think, it appears, that he has done anything wrong. He appears to just think he was railroaded and everything he did was correct. These speaking engagements, if true, are very disturbing, and I think they're going to have a major impact on the judge's decision with regard to sentencing.
Well, I wonder if I'm totally off by this, Tyler. Could the defense use this to their advantage? And hey, listen, this is very consistent with what Sean Combs has been saying in his letter. You know, that he's been doing good on the inside, speaking to inmates, trying to better their lives. There's nothing he can change about the past, that it's all about his future. Yeah, he's got a speaking engagement in Miami because he wants to warn people. He wants to educate people. You know, he talks about how his life will never be the same after he's been in the MDC. Maybe they're going to own up to it. Am I totally off by thinking that?
I don't think you're off at all. And I don't think the judge is really going to give that too much weight. I mean, every defendant wants to be free. Mr. Combs wants to be free, and he booked a speaking engagement. For all we know, he could be speaking to children about staying away from a life of crime, staying away from drugs and excessive lifestyle, as he said. Now, the prosecution is clearly going to say this is a man who has ego that's beyond, human nature, and he expects to walk out of jail immediately. But I don't see there really being any much to this. It's really a nothing burger. I think the facts are what the facts are. The sentencing guidelines are what they are. And I think the judge is smart enough to stay on track when both sides try to pull him one way or the other.
Hey, Tyler, can the judge ask Sean Combs, like if Sean Combs provides a statement to court and it echoes a lot of what he's been saying, can the judge say, Mr. Combs, can I ask you about this booking engagement? Can he ask questions to him during the course of this sentencing?
It's a judge's courtroom. He can ask questions.
Interesting. Alexis, update from court. Prosecutor Slavic says even in cases that decline to apply the cross-reference, significant sentences are handed down, including in this district. I guess the bigger question here, Alexis, is what realistically could his sentence be if he was acquitted of the more serious charges? If you couple transportation to engage in prostitution, if he was convicted of racketeering conspiracy, he was convicted of sex trafficking and transportation to engage in prostitution, that's an enhancer, that's an aggravator, it's part of an overall story. But it goes to this idea also, like, there are people who say he wouldn't have been prosecuted if all the government had was prostitution charges. They wouldn't have gone they wouldn't have filed the charges against them, they would have prosecuted him. So if he was acquitted of those serious charges, I do wonder, in and of itself, transportation to engage in prostitution, what could he be looking at?
For the transportation, it's up to 10 years per count. So we're talking 20 years is the max that of what he's looking at. But I don't think he's going to get anywhere. We've got probation coming in at 7. We've got prosecution only asking for 11. But also we have to focus on the fact that just because he wasn't convicted of those charges, remember, there was testimony with regard to support, for instance, the violent aspects. I mean, specifically that video. So, which he did, admit in the public that he did do that. There was that whole video where he was responding to, the video in the hallway at the hotel, which was one of the things that the judge did look at and consider with whether he was going to release him post-conviction. So, I mean, when they're saying that, like you were saying, the crossover, that the fact that he was acquitted doesn't take away from some of the allegations supporting that violent aspect.
Now, they're talking about comparable cases and all that. Here's my question, Tyler. You remember the apology video? Remember his apology video that he put forward right after CNN had published the 2016 tape of him beating Cassie Ventura? You couple that, I'm going to play that for you, and then you couple that with what he's saying in this letter to the court and what he might say in court, where he describes he's been reading and writing, working out, attending therapy, teaching a free game business course to inmates, sharing both successes and failures. Let's compare that to the video, and we'll talk about it.
It's so difficult to reflect on the darkest times in your life. Sometimes you got to do that. I was up. I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable. I take full responsibility for my actions in that video. I'm disgusted. I was disgusted then when I did it. I'm disgusted now. I went and I sought out professional help. I had to go into therapy. Going to rehab. Had to ask God for his mercy and grace. I'm so sorry. but I'm committed to be a better man each and every day. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm truly sorry.
Now, Tyler, I'm no psychologist. I can't read Sean Combs' mind, but I can tell you what the law is. And here's the problem. Here's the problem, okay? Problem is, if you listen to what the prosecution presented during the course of the trial, he committed crimes or allegedly committed crimes after that video. I mean, what was found in his hotel room when he was ultimately arrested in New York? Evidence of freak-offs or wild king nights or whatever you want to call it. There are people who looked at that video and said, I don't believe it. I don't believe he's sincere. So if we're talking about what he can say, what he can do in court to really fight for his life after he's already been convicted, are there lessons from that video? Is that video going to play a role here? What do you take away from it, Tyler?
I think the video will play a role. It's out there and it's in the public domain, and Mr. Combs has said that, and he's essentially saying the same thing now in his letter to the court where he apologized, take responsibility, said that he's rehabilitated himself. He's in jail doing the right thing now. And I think the judge is going to make a decision that takes all of that into consideration. Now, he has been in jail for 14 months. He just went on trial for his life. So this has not been a cakewalk for him. And being in jail is not easy for anybody. And so I think the court has a tough call to make here. But I do think that, the letters from inmates, him having an impact on their lives, I do think that the judge is going to say he has some redeeming value in the future of his life. But that doesn't mean that he escapes responsibility. There has to be some sort of accountability. And I think the court is going to be very aware of that in the sentence that they hand out. And I don't think they're going to let this be something where he just walks out immediately after being processed.
We got a poll up. How are you feeling as we wait? 52% say here for the drama. 22% say anxious. 17% say hopeful. And 9% say angry. I think that's a good kind of, summary of the feelings of this case. Alexis, how much can a defendant's statements in court affect a sentence when there is no pro forma sentence? There is no mandatory, this is life in prison. It really doesn't matter what anyone says. There's a lot of room here. There's a lot of discretion. How much does it matter? How much does it affect what the defendant says?
Well, first, if I was taking the poll, I'd have to say I'm here for the drama too. But secondly, that is taken into consideration. But I mean, some of these statements that he's making, as well as this letter from the inmates, I'm not buying what they're selling with the letters from the inmates. I have a concern that those letters were made because these inmates possibly think that when they get out, there'll be some benefit to them, making that once Diddy is out. So I'm not buying what they're selling there. But the court does take into consideration that. But what they're really looking for from the defendant is that he has remorse, that he acknowledges what he has done is wrong, and that he wants to move forward in a positive and be a productive part of society and not go back out and could, reuse drugs and abuse people and do the things that he was previously doing. And with that he's clean, he's in jail. So, I mean, that doesn't mean there are plenty of inmates that have gone clean in jail and went right back out, start using again. So that, to me, that doesn't say much either. This speaking thing, as much as Tyler is saying that he doesn't think it's that big of a deal, I think it's a huge deal because I could turn around as a prosecutor and potentially argue that it's re-victimizing the victims, that he's going to go out and he's going to be living, free and potentially making these speaking engagements, making them feel unsafe. So, I mean, there's obviously good lawyers can argue both sides of the coin, but they're going to be looked at, but it's a balancing act.
By the way, Tyler, CNN is reporting that in court today, the judge has accepted that the range of 70 to 87 months, so we're talking about 5 to 7 years, that was recommended in the pre-sentencing report is appropriate, that there would be no reason to deviate from that. Also saying that the guidelines allow a fine of $25,000 to $250,000. He's going to prison? Is that what we're saying? He's going to prison for several years? Is that what we're saying, Tyler?
Well, it sounds like the court has indicated that he's going to jail. I think the sentencing guidelines here and the report that we received from probation clearly showed that. He hasn't given the sentence yet, but it seems like he's accepting the recommendation, and Mr. Combs is going to be spending some time in jail.
By the way, we got some commentary about this. In the federal prison system, do you have to serve 85% of the sentence before you're eligible for parole? How does it work? Do you know?
It depends. I do think he'll be eligible for early release with these two counts.
Interesting. All right. We got a super chat question, Sierra. I'm going to go to you. This is from Christina Lester. Second super chat question from Christina Lester. Thank you so much. Has Sean Combs been subject to any drug testing while in jail?
Christina, this is such a good question because as we know now in P. Diddy himself, talking to the court, he says, I've been sober for the first time in decades. I've had, reform. I've learned a lot while I've been in jail. So the question mark here is, has he been subjected to drug tests? Well, there's no definitive reporting on that. I think it's definitely possible. But what I will say is, if you recall, P. Diddy trying to make bail, not once, twice, 3 times, he kept going back, wanting to make bail over and over. And multiple times we reported it right here on Law and Crime. It was denied. However, what I do want to note is that Diddy himself offered when he was making these bids for bail, yeah, okay, I'll take drug tests weekly if that's something that you want to make sure that I'm sober. I'm willing to do that. So I think it's really interesting that when he was hoping to get bail, he said, I will do these drug tests voluntarily. Now he's saying he is sober. So has he been doing drug tests behind bars? Unclear, but I guess I would tend to believe that maybe he is sober based on his voluntary drug test that he said he would do.
So we got an update from court. Okay, so the prosecutor is really hammering away at Sean Combs and the aggravated nature of this case. Prosecutor Slavic, the video from the LA hotel, we're talking about the Cassie video, was played many times at trial and it never got easier. As to Jane, he punched her, he slapped her a little over a year ago when he knew he was under federal investigation. At trial, they said they owned the violence. Admitting to violence in front of the jury as part of a trial strategy is not accountability. Freak-offs were extended performances of sexual degradation and humiliation. Cassie and Jane did not want to have sex with strangers. He made them do it. Sorry I have to say this, but he had an escort urinate in Cassie's mouth until she choked. Her victim impact statement makes clear she still has nightmares and flashbacks and the scars on her body. Jane's text makes clear her anguish and trauma. Mia said she got PTSD and anxiety. Deontay Nash said he was caused lasting damage. Capricorn Clark says he blacklisted her once she spoke up. Chef Jordan Atkinson wrote how she was impacted. It was real and serious. So Alexis, you take all that in mind. We have a question from Rosalba. Does the panel agree that the judge will want to add appropriate time for his rehabilitation because they're proof that he won't offend again? I mean, is there proof that he won't offend again? Is he a changed person from, this conduct that was mentioned, was illuminated during the course of this trial?
Great question. Listen, there's never proof that somebody is rehabilitated. I mean, the name of the game here at the sentencing is for, the defendant to say that, yeah, I'm rehabilitated, I'm a changed person, I'm going to move forward with my life in a whole different manner. Now, being in prison in jail is going to change you. There's no doubt about that. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to change him for the better. He is, like you mentioned, Jesse, very charismatic. And, people tend to at least initially like him. So, I mean, I don't know if he's changed. In my opinion, I would say that he's not a changed person.
There's a poll that we have up that's really interesting because a lot of people have been wondering, okay, what's the impact? What's going to happen? What's your view of Sean Combs? What do you think his life's going to be like after he's ultimately released from prison, if he's sentenced to prison, or if he's released today, which looks unlikely? But has your opinion of Diddy changed since his conviction? So 39% of the people polled say not at all. 32% never liked him. 19% say completely. And 10% say a little. What do you think, Sierra? What's your take?
I think it's an interesting poll, right? To show that a lot of people, it seems as though their, opinions of P. Diddy haven't necessarily changed. And maybe that's because they never liked him to begin with. I mean, if we're talking about, since conviction, he has now officially been convicted of this crime. Okay. However, prior to all of this, we've been reporting on this. I remember very specifically the first sidebar, Jesse, that you hosted was November of 2023, because of course that's when Kathy Ventura filed her bombshell lawsuit. And then after that, it's hard to keep track of the number of civil lawsuits that came out. So perhaps maybe it's all of these people who are watching right now who their opinion of P. Diddy changed back then when we first had Cassie. And then of course, we're talking about Jane Doe or Liza Gardner, etc. All of the many lawsuits leading up to Lil Rod and the many others that trickled out after that. And of course, I'm sure following law and crime coverage of the trial here, where you and Elizabeth Milner broke down everything, I think that probably changed a lot of the court of public opinion about P. Diddy, hearing these allegations against him and what it was really like inside the bedroom or hotel room, rather, what it was like during those, Wild King nights or freak offs. And I'm sure for a lot of people, that could have changed their opinion of P. Diddy. But, I mean, I guess it remains to be seen what's ahead for his future, whether he can ever bounce back in terms of, cultural significance. I've said this from the start, I don't think Diddy's going anywhere quietly. Even if people, by and large, don't like him, he still has his niche section of supporters.
Interesting you say that, because I'm going back to this update from court. Nicole Westmoreland speaking on his behalf. She says, he's just trying to help. He opened 3 charter schools in neighborhoods where the schools were not good. The motto was Black Excellence. The youth are our future. Mr. Combs personally inspired me. I went to an event in D.C. Mr. Combs was there. He said, listen, everyone, I'm sorry. He said, don't be afraid to dream. Just remember to wake up and put actions behind your dreams. And then he said, don't forget to help others. That changed my life. Now, I think when she said, I'm sorry, I think she is crying in court. Look, Doctor, I wonder if that is impacting the judge here. Maybe not necessarily the emotion, maybe the emotion of the attorney, but talking about the impact he had, the career that he had, the future. I mean, do judges consider the impact that someone can have, the benefit they might have to society?
I believe so. I mean,
Okay.
I've done hundreds of designations for inmates across the country throughout my career. The main thing is, going back to that pre-sentence report, looking at the offense and conduct, and then when he's been interviewed, did he take responsibility? Does the things that reports about him teaching these classes, are they backed up by when he met with the probation officer? Did he actually accept responsibility? All those things come into play, but at the end of the day, there's still going to be a judgment. So while it'll be more interesting to see if he is sentenced to, 3 to 5 or 7 years or 10 years. Will he still continue to teach classes? Will he still continue to fight for other inmates? That's the test is going to come when the judgment comes down. So I think it's a little bit of theater as far as the defense attorney, not necessarily being emotional, because that's not a problem, but I just think that's not going to make a major impact on the judge's decision, because he's going to ultimately weigh all of the information that has been gathered throughout this case.
Got another question for you from Brittany Curry. Since a lot of countries deny entry to a felon, how would his international travel be affected?
Well, once he's released, he's probably going to be on supervised release. So any travel that he has, he's going to have to go through his probation officer. So during his supervised release, so any travel outside of the jurisdiction that he releases from will have to be cleared by the probation office.
So Safa, something interesting is going on here too. I want to mention Nicole Westmoreland has been saying Mr. Combs was there. He said, listen, sorry. Mr. Combs is just a man, and he's made some mistakes. He has flaws like we all do. But how many of us can say that we've helped so many lives, countless lives? He's been in jail, and he's remorseful. I spend every day speaking with him. The judge kind of took objection earlier on about where he basically said it doesn't appear that Sean Combs is really accepting responsibility for what he did here. Is the defense downplaying the crimes too much? Is this going to work against them in terms of sentencing?
I don't think that they're trying to downplay the crimes, but what I think they're trying to do is highlight the other aspects that the judge needs to and will ultimately consider. So somewhat taking accountability, yes, and there's going to be a need for that from Mr. Combs's behalf, but also saying, yes, judge, and it's towing a fine line because in their mind, there is still some dispute on whether or not these are actual victims or dispute about the conviction and some of the conduct or the alleged facts that the judge is going to consider. So towing that line between accepting responsibility and accountability for that, but also taking that accountability and highlighting all of the other things that Mr. Combs is known for. And I think that it's very unique here. And I really hope I'm not wrong as I'm saying this. I think that Ms. Westmoreland, she is the African-American attorney on the team.
Yes. Yes.
And so I think it's very interesting that she is delivering the statement at this moment for Mr. Combs, who is obviously a Black man who, you know, is one of the pioneers in the hip hop world and in the entertainment world. And again, to her point earlier, is he has been one of the few or one of the first that has been able to sort of leverage, you know, Black or African-American talent and things of that nature into the entertainment industry. And also to her point of his impact on her when she had her visit to DC. I don't think that that will significantly impact the judge's decision, but it's interesting to see the lens that they are trying to convey to the court through this statement with this attorney.
By the way, Sierra, we put up a poll regarding one of the bombshells that came out today. How do you feel that Diddy lined up speaking events, even though he's in custody still? 45% say disrespectful to victims, 26% say moving too fast, 18% just business, 11% say smart PR. That was a big bombshell, right? And you had mentioned why it confuses you with respect. I think you said the math is not mathing.
The math is not mathing, Jesse. And I'm not good at math, but it's not mathing, okay? So that poll, it is interesting because while we were on air, you broke that bombshell. And I think I even interrupted you. I was so shocked to hear that according to federal prosecutors, P. Diddy has lined up this speaking engagement for next week in Miami. But let me go back to the math and break it down if I can. So P. Diddy's team, the defense, is asking for 14 months, essentially time served, but not quite, because he was arrested and booked into MDC Brooklyn on September 16th, 2024. So we're not quite at the 13-month situation because right now we're only at October 3rd. So if they're asking for 14 months, let's say they get it. That's what they wanted, right? So that's a little bit more time. I mean, that's pushing us into November. So if he has this speaking engagement rather, set for next week, why are they asking for the 14 months? That doesn't make sense to me. But honestly, if you're asking me about the poll, I am a little shocked that there is this alleged speaking engagement that he has booked. However, it is P. Diddy, so how surprised should we be?
Dr. Hendricks, that's a good point. Dr. Hendricks, does it make sense to you?
Well, if he gets the 14-month sentence, a year and a day sentence triggers 47 days of good conduct time. So he's already served a year in prison. So if he gets the 14 months,
he can get out.
He can get out within a few days. I don't have a computer in front of me to do the calculation.
That makes it seem like he really thought he's getting out.
Right, exactly. So they're hedging their bet that he's going to get that 14-month sentence, and he's prepared to do the things that he wants to do in the community and beyond once he gets out. And I think that's why they've established a date for this speaking engagement in Miami.
They were not. The prosecution was not happy about that. They basically said it shows his hubris about it. Super chat question from Christina Lester. Thank you, Christina. Really appreciate it. Jesse, will Ben Chu be joining us today? He will not be joining us today, but my gosh, isn't Ben always in our minds? Isn't he always in our hearts? So let's keep it there. No, but Ben's a busy guy. Won't be making it today, but maybe we'll be able to relay that question to him nonetheless. Okay, Joe Rod says, I'm still laughing that the Punisher is at the court. Yes, he is there. Nicole Westmoreland, in the MDC, Mr. Combs started asking people their dreams. That's how Free Game for Diddy was born. No one's done this in the MDC before. Is that true?
I believe so. You know, as we know, Mr. Combs is a very creative individual, and I'm sure he probably had a little bit of homework done on the evidence-based courses that they already have at the facility. So I'm not surprised that he came up with this particular course for the individuals, and especially since he's not going to get paid for facilitating this class, so why not call it free game? And the timing of it all makes sense as well, because I'm sure he didn't have time during the trial phase to have time to be talking to inmates on a day-to-day basis because he was preparing for trial. But post-sentence, since July, I mean, he's had enough time to create this course and begin facilitating it to the other individuals in the building. And of course, at the end of the day, this is to help him ultimately because he's not going to be able to benefit from any type of courses because he's going to have to serve a day for a day,
Yep.
at 85% if he does get above 14 months.
Hey, Safa, here's a question for you. This is from Ray Santiago. Can the president pardon him?
Well, yes, he can. At this point, Mr. Combs has been convicted. And so now if the judge not the judge, but if Mr. Trump wanted to, he could certainly consider a pardon for Mr. Combs.
You think he's going to do it?
Nah. I think there was conversation about it, and then Trump said something to the effect that maybe Diddy was on the opposite side of the political spectrum as him. So I think Mr. Trump's going to leave that one alone.
What did you make, Dr. Hendricks, of the video? So we've been playing it a little bit. Have you ever seen that before, where a video has been put together highlighting the achievements, the career, the volunteer service, the benefits someone has provided to a community? Have you seen that? Has that been effective before?
No, I have not seen it before, but obviously we're now living in a technology age, and I think this may be the start of something. I'm sure other individuals who have access to footage or B-roll or photos that they may be able to show their goodwill in the communities that they come from across the country, they may be able to establish something like that, like Mr. Combs is doing, to show his human side. And this should be something to illustrate for all individuals that are being incarcerated across this country, that they may be humanized and that they may have to take responsibility for their actions, but they still can contribute something to society as they move forward. So I think this is a good thing that he's doing to show his human side, even though he's convicted of the two counts that he was. And I believe that this could be a start of something in the future for other individuals who are facing federal and state time.
Sierra, there's a lot of question, a lot of feeling about the emotion there today, right? So there's a poll up that says, how do you think Diddy will react when he hears his fate? 37% say he'll be emotional, 29% say calm and composed, 20% will say shocked, 14% say defiant. What is the feeling outside that courthouse? What has been the feeling during the course of this trial? There are complicated emotions for people. I think a big part of it was, the Sean Combs that we knew, the Sean Combs that was beloved, the Sean Combs that was renowned. To hear the allegations against him and to hear what he was convicted of was a shock to many people. And it kind of goes into that poll about, does your feeling about him change? Does your view on him change? But there are complicated feelings where people don't believe the victims in this case. There are people who don't believe he should have been convicted. There are people who believe he should have been convicted across the board. What is that feeling that you're seeing from outside the courthouse and as you've been covering this trial?
I think it's hard, right? Because the reason that we all are following this case is because we know the name Sean P. Diddy Combs because he was a celebrity. And that's really what it is. When we know a celebrity, we know them from afar. We idolize them because of their music or movies, etc. And we don't necessarily know what's going on behind closed doors. But now with this trial, with everything seemingly out in the open, it does, to your point in that poll we spoke about earlier, change the course of public opinion in regards to P. Diddy and the allegation and now conviction that he has. So I guess it remains to be seen what sort of reaction Diddy himself, Sean Combs, will have when this sentence is handed down. As for what's going on right here, I've seen a little bit of everything. Earlier throughout this live stream today, I've heard multiple people running up and down the street yelling, "Free Diddy." So there are still supporters here for P. Diddy. Additionally, I just saw a man moments ago who came over live streaming and said, "I've been watching Law and Crime. I'd love you guys." So we have people here who are watching our live stream down at the courthouse supporting what we're talking about here. So it's an interesting juxtaposition of emotions here on both sides.
I want to get 2 quick points from both my guests before I have to sign them off. Sierra's going to stay with us, of course. So there's an update here, Dr. Hendricks, from court. Nicole Westmoreland, there is no benefit to warehousing Mr. Combs in prison. Thank you. Judge asked Mr. Steele. Mr. Steele says, Brian Steele, one of his defense attorneys, we wanted his children to come up, then show the video. Judge says, please come forward. My name is Quincy Brown. He's my father. So we're about to hear from Quincy Brown.
Yes,
no benefit to warehousing Mr. Combs in prison?
Well, I mean, of course, the defense is going to say that because, you know, they don't want their client to be behind bars. So, I mean, that, but in terms of him, you know, being held accountable for his actions, and the judge is going to have to make that decision. And that's why they have the high responsibility of being a federal judge, is that they are going to be able to measure all of the information based on the evidence, based on criminal history, based on what he can bring to the table in the community later on in his life. And ultimately, that judge is going to have to make that decision. So, but I'm not surprised that his defense attorney said there's no public benefit from it. So, I mean, and that's a question for a lot of different individuals who are incarcerated. But ultimately, he's going to have to take responsibility for his actions, and it may include some jail time.
They're moving pretty quickly, Safa, through these statements from family. Quincy Brown says, this is his son, he is transformed. He will not jeopardize his freedom again. As his children, we wish to heal together. Next up, my name is Justin Combs. I ask you, give my father a second chance. My father is my superhero. My father always told me to believe in God. I talk to my father every day, every other hour. Next up, I'm Christian Combs. I'm the one who most resembled my pops, my mannerism. My whole life, I studied my dad up and down. He is the greatest man in the world, my superhero. Is this going to have an impact on the judge's decision, Safa?
I think it's most certainly going to have an impact. And I think that this, in part, is going to be the defense's strongest tactic to get the judge to come in alignment with their sentencing request. Right now, what you see is obviously the children of Mr. Combs who are really delivering heartfelt, heart impacting, and pulling at the judge's heartstrings for leniency for their father. And these are the individuals that truly have firsthand relationships and that will be impacted the most with Mr. Combs' absence. So I think that what they're going to be saying and what his other children continue to say will have a compelling effect on the judge. So compelling that, you know, he'd give him time served or the 14 months essentially. Probably not. But I think that these statements from the children are going to really echo in the judge's mind as he considers his sentence.
Safa Robinson-Ferrer, Dr. Dwayne Hendricks, thank you both so much for coming on. Really, really appreciated your expert insight and analysis into this as we continue into another hour of the Sean Diddy Combs sentencing. Sierra Gillespie and I will be right back. We have new guests coming on. Again, I said full day affair. We don't know how long this sentencing is going to happen, but we're covering it for you right here on Long Crime. We'll be right back.